in today and joining Karen and I for this webinar adventure. Hopefully it's a good use of your time this afternoon. I apologize right up front for my amazing head cold that I'm sure is providing you with interesting audio. Head colds are quite the thing right now at Duke School. Probably at your school too, but it could always be worse. To add to this adventure, just to give you my little visual, I'm sitting in my office where it's raining horribly outside. It's a balmy 43 degrees, and we have all tin roofs on our building, so the rain on the roof is really actually lovely, but it's rather lulling, so it's hard to be on point and awake for the afternoon. But we will do our best and use your time wisely for something good. So it's, as Karen mentioned in her intro, we're going to talk a little bit about Duke School's work to tackle attrition at our school. We did it over a number of years, and it's something that we continue to pay attention each year. Hopefully you guys all have the visual of the giant dragon. We are the Duke School Dragons, and so that is our guy, Sparky. So the first thing I want to acknowledge is in all the work that we do and did on attrition, it takes a whole group of people to do it. It's not me sitting alone in the admissions office, and all of those people with their names on those jerseys are my teammates. It's people on the leadership team, our head of school, division directors, business manager, curriculum director, director of development, our admissions team. Everybody is really important and essential, and you'll see throughout everything that I show you that this is not a silo event. It took us all to move the needle. And also, I give acknowledgments and thanks to the Triangle Independent School Consortium. It's our area consortium. It's an amazing group of professionals. Been together for 10 years, and they are remarkable in all that they do, and I didn't want to move through this without acknowledging how they make me a better admissions director and how they make my school better as well. So to talk a little bit, let me give you some background on Duke School and what we're all about. So we're a day school. We work with 3-year-olds through 8th grade. There's about 500 kids on campus, 486. We tap out at about 500. We budget at 480. Our hope is to stay in the 490 range. Feels like something healthy to us. What that turns out to be, it's about 2 classes per grade level. We're in Durham, North Carolina, which is part of the Research Triangle Park. Often, if you don't know North Carolina, people refer to the area of Research Triangle, and it's made up of Durham, Raleigh, and Chapel Hill. Our school was established in 1947. We were a lab school for Duke University. We were there for 20 years or so, and the school got bigger and bigger, and they had less need for us as an observational place. And so the president of the university at the time helped us spin off and become an independent school. We have a very nice, healthy relationship with the university and share the name, but that's about it. Our mission, we're here to prepare the next generation of problem solvers for our complex world. You know, so many of us, we have our little mission statements, and we, like you, truly believe that's what we're about, and we do analysis every year just to make sure that that's where we're taking our kids and where we're leading them with our work. So I think beyond who we are and what we're doing each day, it's important to talk about our market. And this map shows all the schools that are in our consortium. So there are 14 schools in the consortium. We are not that far away from one another. Our 2 major competitors are literally, one is 4 miles away from our front door and the other one is 4.2 miles away. And why I think that's a significant factor is when parents are shopping because they're unhappy with us or they have a concern about what's going on campus, they don't have to drive far to shop. It's right down the street. So it's easy for families to school jump and no time at all. And within the 14 schools, there are lots of different options. There's Montessori's, there's more traditional schools, there's classic schools, there's progressive schools like ours. And those dots on the map show all the independent schools in the consortium, but that doesn't take into account the charter schools, the magnet schools, the solid public schools in the area. So there's lots of competition for our students. So this is the big magic number, and I'm actually, if you're feeling bold enough, going to ask you to do a little math problem. So this number was part of the reason we jumped into a massive conversation about attrition. And what that number comes from is a 14% attrition rate, and we had 60 kids walking out the door. So if you have a scrap piece of paper, if you know your math figures, think about how many kids exited your school last year and do a quick multiplication against, a rounded number for your tuition and figure out how much money you had walk out the door last year. And if nothing else, this number was shocking to us and absolutely a reason for us to get on board. There's no way to do a show of hands if you actually did the math, but it is an interesting talking point. One of the reasons I actually throw this slide in front of you is because in admissions, attrition is something we think about all the time. But when you put a number such as this in front of a business manager or someone who's more money-minded or data-driven, that number is significant and can bring people into the conversation. Back to that original slide that it takes more than just admissions to turn the corner on this. This number helped people understand what we were up against and help them get on board. So hopefully you did your math. So this is a look at our historical attrition. It's not a pretty sight. The typical NAIS average is about a 10% attrition rate. And when you look completely across our entire chart for these years, you can see there was only 2 years out of so many that we beat that number. We had attrition issues for years and years and years. It wasn't just when we got to 08, 09, 9, 10 that we started to really ponder it. 9, 10, that 14%, really obviously says we've got a problem and we need to tackle it. But we had a long-term problem that we needed to jump into and solve. So in order to tackle this, there were a number of constituencies that we needed to get on board to address it. So the first was the leadership team. So all of our administrators, our head of school, our division directors, admissions team, development team, I don't know if, and like we have an auxiliary programs director, all of those administrative members had to be aware and agree that there was a problem and the problem was significant enough that we as a team needed to tackle it. The second thing was the board of trustees, getting the board to understand why we as a leadership team had designated tackling attrition as one of our major issues for the year, why we'd set moving that needle as one of our goals. There was some work that they could help us with, but it was really getting them to understand that it was important to us and we were going to be dedicating a lot of time to it. Faculty and staff, talking to the faculty and staff, telling them this is our major goal, here's what we're headed for, and later in the presentation I'll talk a bit about how we got our faculty and staff involved, and also our parent association. We didn't sell it as this major concern like, holy cow, we're having major issues, but making them aware, and they also play a part down the road that I'll show you in the presentation as well. So when we started this discussion, we were sitting around the table and we just started throwing out ideas of why attrition was a problem. So it was, everybody, could throw any ideas out, and we sort of would throw anything at the wall that would maybe stick. And as the donkey indicates, we kind of proved ourselves wrong. So these were some of the assumptions that we worked through. We believed that it was long-standing families that were leaving Duke School. They were here, they had an issue, and after 5 or 6 years, they were disappearing. But this graph, so we chased the data. So students of long-standing that were leaving, we actually proved ourselves wrong. It wasn't our long-term families that were leaving. It was the families that were leaving in the first and second year that gave us cause for concern. So we had people, they'd come, they'd go through the process, they'd be happy for a year or so, and then off they would head. So we proved ourselves wrong with that assumption. The next assumption is everyone is leaving before middle school, and we were convinced, at the time we thought we had a major issue in middle school, that the product wasn't something that was desirable. There were other schools in the area. Public school was maybe a better option for some kids. Everybody was deserting Duke School after lower school, after 4th grade, and heading to public school. So we ran the data on that, and again, we proved ourselves wrong. It wasn't just a middle school issue. The middle school concern of 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, or I'm sorry, 5th, 6th, and 7th, it didn't look good. It doesn't look good on this chart. But the greater concern was the preschool numbers. 10% of our 3-year-olds were heading out the door. 13% of our 4-year-olds, another 10% of our Ks were walking out the door. Now, there was a transitional area or issue between 4th and 5th grade, but our little kids were as big of a problem as our bigger kids. So we disproved ourselves again with that assumption. The next discussion was that Durham is a transient in nature. As I mentioned early in the presentation, we sit in the middle of the research area. So there are 2 major universities, Duke and University of North Carolina. There are 2 major medical centers, one at each of the universities. There's a major research park that attracts, scientists and engineers from all over the world. It's an amazing place. And there is a certain transient nature of people coming and going. So that was a little bit of an assumption. We also thought all elementary schools have high attrition. That's just the way it is. People are just looking for a place to get the baseline for their kids, and then they're moving on. And progressive schools like Duke School, they have high attrition too. People get it for when their kids are little, but then as they get older, they want something more concrete. And again, we proved ourselves absolutely wrong. So this chart looks at the 10-year average of attrition for these different schools. So the schools that are listed on the right are a mix of our local market, but also progressive schools across the country, elementary schools across the country that we could benchmark ourselves against. And no matter which way you mix it, we are that bright blue bar on the right side. We were still blowing everybody else out of the water with our attrition. So all these sort of fallacies that we fed ourselves about why attrition was an issue, none of them came to pass. So based on that research, based on that data work, we decided that there were 3 things we needed to work on, and these were going to be the drivers of all of our work that we were going to focus on heartily the first year and into the 2nd and 3rd year. The first thing was making the school feel like one campus, pulling the school together. We, a year before we took on this attrition study, we'd been on 2 campuses. We moved to 1 campus. And there's definitely some work to be done on pulling the school together so that everyone would feel that it was Duke School, not Duke School Lower School or Duke School Middle School, that we were just Duke School. The second one was we needed to do some rebranding. This is our old logo. And while it's charming and cute, the jokes that came from left and right about the little boy stuck in the box needed to go away. And part of the struggle with it, beyond the little boy in the box, who is still amusing to me, not sure if he's dancing or trying to get out, is Duke University's colors are a dark blue, much similar to the logo. And we needed to differentiate ourselves from the university. Sharing the name of the university is a plus, especially because it's such a prestigious, wonderful, great university. But we are just miles from the University of North Carolina, its biggest rival. And so we had families who wouldn't even think of considering Duke School because they thought you had to be affiliated with Duke. They would hesitate to explore Duke School because they were Carolina fans. I mean, it sounds a little silly, but it's true, and so we needed to differentiate ourselves. And the last driver was to attack those families who were leaving so early, the families who would come for a year or two and disappear. So we had to find ways to help them feel connected. And then we set our goals. I think the goals are really important, what we actually did. If you'll notice in the left-hand column, in the retention rate, the first is the actual for 08, 09. Our goals for each year were only small percentage point changes. We weren't looking to change the world overnight, but if we could trim it 3% a year over time, we'd be in much better shape, but we were very realistic with each other. and as a team knowing that we weren't going to turn the ship in just 1 year, but we could tackle it a bit each year and keep pushing forward to change those numbers. Then you can see as you roll across the chart what that would equate to in actual students leaving and then what it would do to total enrollment. So our action steps fell again into the 3 categories: helping everybody understand that Duke School was one, integrating new families, and also tackling our marketing boy in the box issue. And here's how we did it. For each major character, for one school, for new families, for marketing, there was a worksheet. And on the worksheet, we plotted the million different things that could go into helping that issue. So you can see the first column, task, on the left. Those were all the different things that we thought we could tackle, we thought we could do, or should be done. There was a worksheet for this for each major task, and each of them was 2 to 3 pages long. They were Google spreadsheets. Everybody saw them on the leadership team, and they were revisited every month. And our head of school held our feet to the fire in the reporting, the status chart. So as we set the task and we were throwing up ideas, and anybody could throw up an idea. It didn't just have to be me throwing up admissions idea or the head of school doing academic items, whatever it is. Anybody could throw up anybody, but then we logically thought about who is the responsible person who is going to jump on this and take care of it. And that's how we got the responsible parties list. Everything was given a due date because it was important. And again, if we didn't think it was important enough to give it a due date, it probably wasn't important enough to put on the list in the first place. Status, each of us had the responsibility of checking into the status before that monthly meeting to say, here's we are, here's what we're doing, here's what's going on. And then we gave the priority. I mean, there's pieces of this, like the 4th item down, create a robust alumni program. That's important. That's something we wanted for our school. It's something we needed from our school. But it wasn't essential in that first year in order to move the attrition needle. So it got a low standing. Whereas you can see, well, you know, one of the concerns we had as we were brainstorming in the Express curriculum is a whole school document, which is at the top of the list. That was something our parents weren't necessarily understanding exactly what we were doing, understanding the rigor of what we were doing, understanding our project work. So that became a high item. That's something we needed to tackle right away because our internal audience wasn't hearing what we were doing. So again, this document this document was about 2.5 pages long, but there was a document per goal. And then one of the major things that we did is we built a watch list. This is probably the most important thing that we did out of that work from the admissions point of view. I'll be candid, I am biased. But it's, to my mind, one of the most important things that we do, and we still use this weekly. How this works is, again, it's a Google Doc. Everybody on leadership team has access to it. Obviously, you know, the columns are important, but you know, we list the child's current grade, child's name, the reason that they may be looking to leave Duke School. We have the 4th column, okay, to solicit for annual fund. It's not there because the annual fund's driving our school, but it's there because it's at the beginning of the list, so it's easier for our development director to just jump on and look, because we don't want him calling someone who might be slightly bothered by something, and that exacerbates it. But we will have people on the list who they might just be moving out of town. That's an attrition that, you know, the last Christopher Columbus on the list. So they're still okay to be solicited. So we try to fine-tune that for him. Who's responsible for following up? So when a child is added to the list, one of us on leadership team is going to be in contact with that family. Whether, you know, it's rumor-based or however that got there, we're going to follow up with the family and see what's actually going on, the action needed. And in the real document, this is a drop-down. So you can call, you can email, there's various ways. But we as a team, or sometimes individually, will decide what the action is going to be. The next 2 columns, current re-enrollment status and results, those two columns we don't really touch until re-enrollment time. They sit sort of blank, unmoved, all through the fall. But when it's re-enrollment time, the business manager and I, we're clicking on those buttons from unknown to re-enrolled or unenrolling, whatever it may be in those two columns at decision time. Number of years families have been at Duke School, we track that because of that early finding that it wasn't our old school families that were leaving, it was our brand new families that were departing. Waited, when we added it to the wait list, placed on the list. So I may put a child onto the list because I hear from somebody that the family may be moving or there's a concern. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm the person who is going to contact the family. We'll have conversations about who's the best person to reach out. And it may be me because I have a stronger relationship with the family, especially if they're a first-year family. Or, it may be one of the directors. It may be the business manager. It depends. And then the final column are the actions, and those get added to all the time as things, as people make phone calls and catch emails and so on and so forth. There's a couple things I think that, and again, I'm speaking from the admissions point of view, but I think there's a couple things that are really important about how this watch list has evolved. It is the responsibility of everybody on leadership team. So our leadership team meets every Thursday afternoon, and one of the things we do is we pop open the watch list every Thursday afternoon and we go through the entire list. So our head is typically driving the bus at that time. He's running the mouse, and we go through all of the kids. If there's any updates, we'll talk specifically about if there's any additions. We may throw back and forth across the table who is the best person to be talking to this family. We're looking for patterns. If we have a whole bunch of people on the watch list in 3rd grade going to 4th grade, is there something we need to have a deeper talk about? Is there an issue? We keep the number of kids on the watch list as a metric number. So it's something we report on every week, and we have that metric, so number of kids on the list, as a year-to-date item on our metrics each week. So we can look back for the last 4 or 5 years and see how many kids were on the watch list at this time last year, the year before, and the year before, so we can see if there's some sort of trend we need to predict. It was actually interesting. Early last year, we had a moment where watch lists seemed to be up a little bit and annual funds seemed to be down a little bit. And so we had a deeper discussion about, is there something going on amongst our families, amongst our students, that we don't know anything about, that we're hearing from, where do we need to be digging, and so forth. And the watch list is one of the places that we ask for assistance from our teachers. We introduced it to that first year and talked to them about helping us fill it out. If you hear a rumor, if you hear something, if you have the kids mention something, then we want to know about it. So, let the director know, let admissions know, let somebody know so it can make the list. One of my favorite stories from last year, one of the little kids made it onto, in our kindergarten, made it onto the watch list because he had said to his teacher, next year I'm going to go to a school where I get hot lunch. And Duke School doesn't have hot lunch. So we kind of knew something was going on. So his reason, we actually posted for a while, is because next year he was going to have hot lunch, which was amusing to all of us, but factual nonetheless. One of the other things that we do that has turned out to be really good practice for us on campus and is helpful with the watch list and just attrition in general is if a family is applying out and they hand in a teacher rec form and the parents give the teacher a teacher rec form, our teachers are aware that they must turn the teacher rec form into the office first so that the office is aware that this is going on, and the office staff know that they're to tell their division director that this teacher recs come in so that we can put the child on the watch list and follow up and see what's going on. And we do that for, if it's a family applying out of state or a family applying to one of those schools 4 miles away. We do that same thing. And then the last thing was the marketing piece. Marketing was a pretty big deal for us to tackle, especially as I mentioned, we had to get away from the boy in the box. And so we took a few years. We actually hired Ian Simmons, who came in and did a study of our marketing. and just, talked us through our messaging, what we were saying. We had a good product, we just weren't selling well. They helped them through us, and then we hired Pop Kitchen, which is a designer in the Boston area, and they helped us come up with our new brand. They were really great. They came in with 6 different options, I think, of a brand to look for us. A grand adventure because, and I'm sure many of you have had this happen on your campus when you've been pushing through things like this. We actually put all the options out in front of the staff so they can engage and be in the conversation with us. And we had people upset that the kids weren't getting to design the new logo. But it was having those talks with the staff that the school was at a point of evolution, and we needed to take a next step forward. So we ended up with this. We like it a lot. The D, if you can notice, has the yin and the yang S inside, which is the balance of what we do with our core academics and our progressive work. Sparky's the dragon, and then the D with the dragon inside is only used for our sports program. So it's only delineated inside. Part of that is because the D with the S is so brand new in the community that we need to really hardcore brand on it for a long time before we do the D and the dragon, which we do love, but he's got room to grow. So after all of this work, and after about a year, and it took a lot of pushing and shoving and monthly meetings and deep discussion, here were our results. So on the right side, you can see where we started and where we ended up in 2013. And we cut in that first year in 09 and 010 by about half. For our market, we think a 7% attrition rate is about healthy for us, because we are going to lose some families moving from the universities and moving out of the Research Triangle Park. But we have healthfully for the last years kept ourselves between that NIS 10% model. We popped up a little bit last year, and so that ended up being a lot of strong discussions. We also started in 10-11, not just keeping the watch list data, but doing the watch list data afterwards, a deeper review. So we do a deep dive on who was on but didn't leave, and did we think our interventions helped? Who didn't make the list, and how did we miss them, and what conversation didn't come forward that we missed so that a family decided to leave? So we're pleased and we're proud. We will admit that we got lucky. A lot of our planets aligned, that we were able to cut it in half that first year, but we're more pleased that it stayed steady throughout, that we stayed below the 10% in a healthful place for our market. Some of the actions that we took that first year with all those worksheets, we continue to do. One of the things that came out of it, out of the endeavor for keeping young families, new families with us, we did 2 things. We did an invigorated ambassador program. We do that hand in hand with our PSO, and that's one of the ways we pulled our PSO in, so trying to engage families and help them feel connected quicker. The initial picture, when I talked about it, had 2 little girls licking a lollipop. No, I'm sorry, popsicles. And it's probably the best event we host on campus, and it's one of the cheapest we host on campus. We do the Wednesday before school starts. School starts on a Wednesday, my apologies. The Saturday before school starts, we do a popsicle party. And it's just for all the preschoolers, all the kindergartners, and their parents. So new kindergartners, new preschoolers, returning families, everybody. But it's just the family and the children. The PSO comes in and hosts it, so they're chatting with everybody and so forth. But I and they are managing the popsicles, but none of the teachers are there. There's not a lot of extra administrators there. It's meant so that the families are interacting with one another, so that they're building roots with one another. We think the more that we can help our new families build roots, the longer they'll stay with us because they feel so connected. So if I had to give you advice, if this is something that your school is going to undertake, the first thing I suggest is that you look at yourself honestly. I mean, we really thought when we were throwing all those ideas on the board that we were geniuses about what was going on, but I showed you 5 major things that we were positive were issues, and we were wrong on all 5 of them. So look at yourself really honestly, ask big questions. Anything that you assume or any guesses that you're making, do everything that you can to support it by data. It gives you extra work, there's no doubt, but had we just jumped off and taken those 5 assumptions as our truth, we would have gone completely in the wrong direction. Open up and ask and talk to many constituencies. You know, there's our teachers responded so well in having the watch list conversations with us. They're the most invested people on our campus, and they were really and continue to be really great about sharing what they know, what they've heard with us. You know, when somebody's put onto the watch list, I'll often, you know, go visit with the teacher who had the conversation and say, what do you know? What's your sense? Like, I believe in their gut instincts, and they'll give us some really great insights. The parent association as well. We didn't want to panic them, but having them their support as we expanded programs was amazing. Make a plan and stick to it. Set out your goals. Be kind about your goals. Don't overtax yourself, but set realistic goals. Make a plan, hold each other accountable, and stick to the plan. The work it can be done. It can be really slow moving. Again, Duke School got lucky that we were able to turn the tide well in 1 year. That's, I can't imagine, the norm. We got lucky, but the plan that we originally set is part of what we still do yearly. And then celebrate with each growth point. Every time something came together off those worksheets, we cheered each other. We gave each other a pat on the back because the work was really important, but the work was a step beyond what we were already doing in our day-to-day work. I mean, this was beyond keeping the trains running on time. We were all taking on extra work for the good of the school. So we did lots of pats on the back. And as Karen said, we can take some questions. And I believe, and I don't know, Karen, if you're going to jump back on, but you can post your questions on your GoToMeeting site, and then she'll present them.
Nicole, thank you so much. Yes, as Nicole said, if you do have a question, I encourage you to type it into your GoToWebinar control panel. There is a question box there so that Nicole can answer these questions live while you're still on the air with her. Nicole, our first question is, Richard is asking, who did your exit interviews? Was that school staff, or did you have a third party do that?
Oh, Richard, that's a great question. We currently do our exit interviews in-house. I lead it in admissions. We have a basic exit survey that families can complete. One of the options within the exit survey is I'd like someone to call me directly, and then there's sort of options of who they want to contact them. Me, the head of school, the division director, you know, sort of within their comfort zone, who do they want to talk to?
Great, thank you. We had a question about the sharing of slides. This is a Prezi presentation, so there really aren't any slides to show, but this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the webinar page in the professional development section on admission.org.
And I did, I'm sorry, Karen, I'm interrupting you for just a second. When I presented at the SSATB conference, one of the questions that we were asked the most was about the watch list. And so what I've done is, if you email me right now, I have my bounce back on. And in the bounce back, if you go to the when it comes back to you, if you go to the very bottom below my signature, there's a web link. And it's, I made a sample Google Doc of our watch list. And you can click that and it will actually show you the watch list. If there are other docs from the presentation that you'd like to see the sample of, you can just email me and ask me for the piece, and I'll happily email it to you. But I do know the watch list was a hot item, so if you email me, it'll bounce back to you and you can hit the link at the very bottom. You have to go down a ways because I hit it in case anybody else emails me at the same time.
Thanks, Nicole. If you want to give that to me as well, I'll put it on the same page as the recording of the webinar.
Oh, brilliant. I can absolutely do that, Karen.
Great. Dawn is asking, can you share any specific tricks or tips to get information from teachers?
So I think, Dawn, I'll go back to the original point. So when we set this as a leadership goal, each year when our leadership team sets their goals for the year, we share them with the entire staff. So the head of school presented this to the teachers, talked about the importance thereof. We are very systematic and continually asking for it. It pops up. Typically we start at the beginning of October, starting chasing them information, if you will. So it'll pop up every other week in our head of school's Monday memo. He puts out a memo just to the staff every Monday. Our division directors will mention it at their whole school their whole team faculty meetings. If you know anything, I make sure, especially for people who I don't hear as much from, that if they give me a tidbit or they give me something to be added to the list, that I get on the list and I immediately send them an email, thank you. Thank you for taking this time out of your busy day, and sort of just build that relationship. I've had to be better, because I will be honest to those of you who are sitting here, I can be a little anal retentive and my mind flies a little bit, so I've had to be better about people throwing me information on the fly. It's not helpful to turn around and say, hey, could you email that to me? I have to remember it. Like, I have to really focus, even if I'm on the run or I've just finished a tour or there's some other craziness. I need to hear them, be present for that moment, and carry it with me, rather than say, can you go back into your crazy classroom with your million kids and suddenly send me an email? Like, I have to be really present with them and meet them where they are. But I'm fortunate to work at a place where our teachers are outstanding and they get the value of what all these different efforts, not just the watch list, but the marketing and so forth. They're really amazingly great people.
Thank you, Nicole. I had a question about the chart that shows the attrition rate of your school versus a group of other schools. Someone's asking, how did you find the attrition rate of those other schools?
So we are an indexed school. So Index is an organization that's data-driven, different independent schools across the United States. And so we're an index school. And so we were able to pull that data from Index. I'm guessing some of the data is even available from NIS. It depends on, and I also, because our consortium is strong enough, if I needed it today, I could even, probably call one of my consortium schools and say, what was your attrition rate last year? We're trying to figure out what we're doing. But most of it came straight out of Index.
Okay, thank you. I had a question regarding the addressing of new students leaving. So, was there anything specific, any additional programs or attention that you paid specifically to those new students that were leaving that made a difference and kind of turned the tide with regards to the attrition rate?
I think the best thing that we did was we have an ambassador family program, which is typical of all schools. We actually start the ambassador match within our office. The PSA will help us manage some of the events, but we do that all in office, because at that juncture in the spring when the matches are happening, we know the families best. And we became more strategic and thoughtful about those family matches. It just wasn't a grade and gender match. We were trying to find people who lived closer together, had connections. We were thoughtfully, purposely picking our current family ambassadors who we knew would be positive, responsible people to do that outreach. And one of the things I learned over the years is in those opening emails to our current families who were going to be the ambassadors, I gave sort of specific ideas of what they could do with this new family. So, please call and X, Y, and Z, and maybe you can set up a play date to do X, Y, and Z, because so many people were willing, they just didn't know what to do. So we gave them some specific examples. We also reinforced with our ambassadors about, especially with our little kids, for the popsicle party. This is a great place to connect with your new family. At the end of the school year, we have a giant picnic. So we invite all of our new families to it. But we actually, before the picnic begins, like the 45 minutes before the picnic begins, we do a lemonade social for all the new families where we encourage their ambassadors to hook up with them. So when these families are going to the picnic, they're not walking in blind without knowing anybody. And we tell our entire community that at this giant, end of the year picnic, we're going to have new families there, and they'll have special name tags on. So please don't be afraid to go up and introduce them. We especially charge our board of trustees with that job. It's a great group of people. A lot of them are really social, so they'll dig right in with us and check in with those, all the new families. One of the things that, I learned trial by error with the program, with the ambassador program, is so I make the connections, put all the emails out, all the important data, and then 3 to 4 weeks later, I check in again with the current family ambassador to see where they are to make sure they're done it. And randomly I'll find somebody who goes, oh, I forgot, or I dropped that email and didn't get it done, and it'll move them along. But I will say when we do a new parent survey the end of September every year, and without fail, the ambassador program is the thing that families are feeling the most strongly about. They just feel welcomed and a part of from the very beginning.
Excellent, thank you. The next question was, have you had any surprises? Have you had people leaving that weren't necessarily on your watch list, and how did you address that situation if that did occur?
Absolutely, this is a great question, and I had one just this last year. So to give you the optics, my office actually sits in the preschool building. So there's 4 preschool classrooms that are fantastic right outside my office. It's very entertaining all the time. And we got to re-enrollment time, and 3 preschool families who I thought I had a pretty good social relationship with, I practically saw them every day, contacted me to say that it wouldn't be re-enrolling. And you could have knocked me over. I was just so shocked because there wasn't a moment in the year that I thought, oh, this is a family I need to worry about. This is, I need to be in touch with, like happy and content. But what happened was those 3 families turned out to be somewhat of a domino situation. One family found out late they were having to move. The other 2 families were a little on the fence about what they want to do. Public school, they weren't really sure. But that first family having to leave made them think deeply enough that they followed suit and changed schools. And again, just bowled over. But still to this day, I'm not sure how I missed it. Obviously, I did. But I think the closest I can come is it was a bit of a domino going back to that original concept of families rooting together and really digging in together. And those 3 dominoes fell over together, and I was bowled over. And it happens every year. And the data, when we revisit the watch list and we really do a deep dive, we consider attrition in a couple of different ways. We look at healthy attrition. We believe that 6 to 7% margin most of the time is healthy attrition. It's people having to move, which is great for us. It opens up spots for us to welcome other families. We look at unhealthy attrition, that just people changing to a public school. We consider the most unhealthy attrition if someone's going to another private school. I mean, that's low-hanging fruit, and they're choosing to go and pay somewhere else what they were paying us, and we spend a lot of time focused on that, not from the competition point of view, but where did we step off? What were we missing that we weren't their top option anymore?
Great, thank you. The next question has to do with the branding and the sort of the one school task that you undertook. Did the 2 of those things sort of dovetail together in order to give you a better sense of the one school that you were looking for?
So sort of my answer will be yes and no. The campus came together, and then it was once we got here and there was it was, I'm stuttering, sorry. It was mixed. Like, it was this beautiful, amazing new campus with all these lovely new buildings, which was great, but because we've been 2 separate entities for so long, that we'd been a lower school and we'd been a middle school, it wasn't a natural transition that suddenly we would be Duke School 1. And DS1 was actually the motto at that time. So we weren't DS1 because it had been so different, and no one had thought of it. I mean, it had always been Duke School Lower School and Duke School Middle School. So that was a very slow transition for not only our families, but also our faculty and staff and administrators. We had to sort of re-wrap our mind around it. So that happened, and it was about a year plus after that that we decided to start tackling the branding and the marketing piece. So they sort of happened because of each other, but there is a time difference. And it's interesting. Now, there's random moments where I still think, well, that sounds like a little lower school or middle school thing. But by and far, this is now 7 years out. We're just Duke School. We don't. We still do a parent night for fourth grade parents as their kids are ready to start middle school and fifth grade. That happened 2 weeks ago. We still have that moment, but we don't. We're not really, I think, at this juncture trying to prove the program that it still works at the middle school level. It's more to give parents an eye on what's going on. And we're actually thinking we're going to have to transition that program because it's been a nighttime event. But what we're really seeing is the parents just want to see how it works in the middle school. Same program, the buildings look a little bit different, it's a little bit bigger. So we're actually thinking we're going to need to transition that program next year into something a little bit different that fits the parents' questions or their needs.
Excellent, thank you. The last question actually has to do with sharing once again. We've had a request for your exit questions, your exit interview questions, if you wouldn't mind supplying those as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So why don't you just supply those to me, and I'll go ahead and post all of these items on the same page. Once again, for those who are listening who may not have heard, this webinar is being recorded, and probably within the next day or so I will be posting it to the webinar page in the professional development section on admission.org. I want to thank our audience for tuning in, and a special thank you to Nicole, especially with your cold and with the nasty weather, for providing us with such an insightful webinar. Thanks again to everyone. Good luck with your admission seasons as we head into the really busy time, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.